We have started to record the most recent session of SPCH 1113, Introduction to Public Speaking, for the first summer session. The 19 sessions, as I told you, go by very quickly. This is the end officially of the first week, our only Friday. It is Friday, June 2nd, 2023. Today we're going to be looking at effective content, delivery, and visuals. And we're going to be looking at a number of presentations, demonstrative, informative, persuasive, and wildcard, that fall into that category. I should indicate at the outset, a couple of you have asked questions offline about whether or not you are going to be choosing your topics for all of the speeches. And of course, the answer is yes. It's up to all of you to determine what your topics are going to be. And with that in mind, the first thing that I want to do today is to return to Blackboard in the student preview mode and show you how you can access all of our videos to date. At this location, you can, as you're well aware, click on Menu and Recordings. This is what we've done so far, with roughly about 90 minutes or so for each of our class sessions. A reminder that all of you are the stars next week for day 1, Wednesday, and day 2, Thursday, for the demonstrative speeches. We'll talk a little bit on Monday about Loom and about how you can put together quality visuals, whether it be Microsoft PowerPoint or Google Slides or Canva, by dropping in something such as Slides Go to make your visuals that much more interesting. We're going to go back in just a moment to Blackboard, but a reminder that you can go either to Blackboard or to my YouTube channel to watch what we do every day. This is what it looks like on Class Collaborate via Blackboard. Here, or by looking on YouTube, you can see what was going on. So as I do just about every day, here is a quick video summary of what we were discussing for our second class session, which focused on part 2 of course requirements. We have started to record the most recent session of SPCH 1113, Introduction to Public Speaking, for the first summer session. The 19 sessions will go by very quickly. It is Thursday, June 1st, 2023. A reminder that we will be meeting this Friday only to make up for the fact that we had Memorial Day earlier in the week. Starting next week, we have 4 consecutive weeks of 4 class periods: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Also a reminder that graded presentations, persuasive, begin with day 1, Wednesday of next week, day 2 on Thursday, just to make certain there is no misunderstanding or confusion about what we're going to be doing during the first summer session. In just a moment, I'm going to return to the student preview mode of Blackboard and remind all of you how you can access data. Most importantly, because most of you are watching these after the fact, it's recording, which is why I went to it twice, to reinforce how you can improve in terms of being on camera. And oftentimes what I'll do during these courses is take video that you or your cohorts from years gone by have native speeches were done in class. This is the second presentation that she provided online, and she's experimenting with a slightly different visual approach for her slides. Her persuasive speech is a topic that all of us can identify with, especially in higher education: why you should not procrastinate.
Other parent to count on too. Like, say I got stuck in traffic and my husband's at work, I can call my ex-husband and say, hey, I need you to get our kids because I'm stuck in traffic. And that's something that we're both putting aside our differences, knowing that we can lean on each other as long as it's to take care of our children.
And really, really short. But when you're sending something to me online, that's taken out of the equation. most of the presentations that are sent to me, time is never an issue. If you want to incorporate some type of video clip as
how to do all of those things, and in the future it'll be easier for me to continue my education rather than having to relearn or learn for the first time when I'm out of college those basic tasks. It looks really good on applications for jobs when you get out of college and professional schools if you're going to a professional school.
As long as that kennel meets the size regulations, which is 6 inches larger than the animal, not including the tail. These cages can also be stacked with flooring that has holes in it, which also facilitates the transmission of organisms such as intestinal parasites. These guidelines are there, but not strictly enforced, and they are also not.
10 for the self-evaluation speech critique. We've got 10 for class participation for a total of 100. Your presentation, but more importantly, how you are being perceived and how you perceive yourself, because that imaging is important. And my constructive criticism will always be positive. I don't believe you learn from negativity. You learn from watching yourself and being critical in your own way, but that's not how I operate, because my feeling is everyone has potential to be a quality public speaker. You just go about it in a different way. It doesn't matter if you have a Southern accent or a Northern accent. It's how you present yourself. Are you authentic in terms of your persona? Are you likable? Are you knowledgeable? Terms that I use over and over again. So we will continue tomorrow with session 3 of 19 for the first summer session. As for SPCH 1113, Introduction to Public Speaking for the first summer session of 2023, that concludes the recording session for today. I've told you before that I am a mass communication, mass media person, been around cameras since I was in high school, radio, television. So something like this is very natural to me. And the concept of video playback is very important to me. I don't know how many professors who teach public speaking courses also have extensive backgrounds in broadcast media or in mass communication as such. But to me, watching all of these videos is only going to help myself as a professor and all of you as students improve as communicators. You view all of that as research data and how you can improve with your content, with your delivery, and with your visuals. Those 3 areas that we're going to be discussing today with a lot of video playback. So with that in mind, you can always look at the videos on Blackboard through Collaborate, or if you want to go to my YouTube channel, a reminder, this is what it looks like. And from this location, you can see that the most recent video has been posted on the left-hand side. This is what we did yesterday, and this is what we did during the first week of class. You don't have to subscribe, but all of this material is something that is very helpful for you to examine. In fact, when you scroll through the playlist, you'll see all different kinds of examples of presentations that have been done in my class, primarily since the pandemic, but I save just about everything from videos to outlines, and I don't necessarily show them all, but I think it's helpful that you all have access to them so I can refer to them on occasion. Let's return to Blackboard because I have updated the course speaking schedule. I told you that from the first day of class, we were at 21 students. Now everything is locked in. We're exactly at 20, which means we have exactly 10 people scheduled to go on day 1 every Wednesday for the next 4 weeks, and then 10 other people for day 2 on those 4 weeks as well. So let me go back again, student preview mode of Blackboard. And to the course speech schedule, which has been updated. It now officially has all of the 20 people who are in the course. Officially, day 1, demonstrative, June 7, informative, June 14, persuasive, June 21, wild card, June 28. Askew, Brewer, Brown, Dean, Easter, Green, Hall, Henderson, Jordan, and Lewis. You will always be ready to go on day 1, which is a Wednesday. Day 2, demonstrative, June 8, informative, June 15, persuasive, June 22, wild card, June 29, Malone, McCamey, Oliveris, Orvis, Perry, Ray, Roy, Sams, Tell, Welch. And then at the bottom, I always say, keep me appraised regularly so I may assist during your respective speech preparation processes. Thanks. I have had a couple of you send me emails through Blackboard, but realistically, guys, most of the time it's probably best for you to communicate either through my Yahoo email address, or some of you can do it through my SAU address. My Blackboard account email is not used all that often. So again, I'll leave that up on the screen for a moment and refer to it at the end of class. Realistically, I would say before you go to bed, if you're scheduled to go on day 1, before you go to bed late at night on Tuesday or very early in the morning on Wednesday, that you always double check to make certain that you've provided a link to your speech with your video. And we'll talk about that on Monday. So don't worry about that for the time being. We'll look at topic selection, research next week. But for those of you who are on day 1, realistically, before you went to bed late on Tuesday night, early on Wednesday, that you send me a link to your speech. Same thing for day 2. Before you go to bed on Wednesday evening or very early on Thursday, probably no later than 11 o'clock or noon. If you're an early morning person, as long as I get it before class and can access it, open it up and have it ready, that would be great. I told you before, those of you who are with me live, I use Google Drive. And because I use Google Drive, I've got tons of tabs across the top of my screen because the media person in me, the television director, I want this to be as interesting visually as possible. So that's why on the days that you give your speeches, I'll have the tabs for all of your links available, and all I have to do is click on them and we can play them. So now let's return to the course syllabus area and remind all of you in the syllabus itself about how this is going to be set up in terms of point allocation. For those of you who were remaining at Southern Arkansas University during the fall, there is a set template for all of the syllabi. So that's why most of them are 5 to 6 pages in length. But keep in mind, there's a link to my website. I'll probably show you that before the end of class again. There's a link to my Twitter, and for the electronic submission assignments, I've shown you that during the first couple of days of class with a particular file specifically set up for SPCH 1113. Send stuff here. As we scroll down, keeping in mind that each of our presentations are worth 20 points, your self-evaluation speech critique is 10, class participation 10, for a total of 100. But for the time being, let's go ahead and leave it right there. So for the demonstrative speech, which begins on Wednesday of next week with day 1, you're going to be utilizing Microsoft PowerPoint or Google Slides or Canva with a minimum of 6 slides, which should get you to about 5 minutes. That shouldn't be an issue. And then with internet data or videos when appropriate, incorporating them into your speech. And I'll be showing you some examples of how people have done that, not only today, but also Monday and Tuesday of next week. So visualize that as we now move on to our focus of the day, which is effective content, delivery, and visuals. Here's the course itinerary, by the way. And let's leave it there. This week, Wednesday, course requirements, part 1, then into the month of June with course requirements, part 2. Today, our only Friday of the term, effective content, delivery, and visuals. But let's take a quick look at next week. It is demonstrative speech week. Monday will be research. Tuesday will be topic selection. Wednesday, day 1. Thursday, day 2. These 2 days, I am going to do something which is unusual for myself, not speak a lot, and make certain that we can play the 10 speakers for day 1 and the 10 speakers for day 2 and play them back to back to back to back. If I say anything, my constructive criticism will always be couched in a positive manner. If any of you have issues with vocalics or grammar, which I'll be talking about in just a moment, I'll always probably say something along the lines of, here's something that you need to look at. But I can tell you, as a student, I didn't learn from negativity. I don't think you learn from it. Whenever you guys are in my classes, and I said it Wednesday, I said it Thursday, and I'll say it again today, I am a glass half full person. I feel if you pay attention to the video clips, look at what your cohorts have done in years gone by, what your classmates are doing in real time, the rising tide is going to lift all boats. And all of those video clips that we don't see are going to be research that you can learn from. So with that in mind, now let's move to our focus for today. The checklist, which is unofficial for the SAU speech critique. Let that sink in for just a moment. I will usually write them specifically for the advanced public speaking course, but during the summer, it's going to be much more informal. When you are preparing for your presentations, you can think about this as an unofficial guidepost. Whenever you are giving your presentations for day 1 and day 2 for each week, I usually will go back and watch the videos over and over again, look at your content and delivery and visuals, and then provide a score, usually over the weekend, probably sometime on Sunday or Sunday evening on Blackboard. I don't grade stuff immediately, so you can just sit back and relax over the weekend, the 3-day weekend starting next week, and look probably sometime Sunday evening, and the scores will be available on Blackboard in the My Grades area. But let's focus on this in the 3 areas of content, delivery, and visuals. When you are in my class, let's first focus on the quality of content. These follow a logical progression. The items on the far left-hand side of each of these 21 areas are what I am going to focus on, because these elements right here on the far left-hand side are going to be elements on which you should concentrate your abilities. The research for your presentations ideally are going to be thorough. Your organization should be logical. Your introduction, relevant. Your main and supporting points, apparent. Your conclusion, compelling. Fairness, inclusive. And your analysis, thoughtful. I'm going to take some time both on Monday and Tuesday of next week to break down organizational structures of particular outlines. But let's go ahead and reinforce this. Whenever you are looking at your presentations, is your research, organization, introduction, main and supporting points, conclusion, fairness, and analysis thorough, logical, relevant, apparent, compelling, inclusive, and thoughtful? One of the elements that I think is very helpful in my class is being able to go to the instructor information area of my website and click on SAU Mass Communication website. Let me go back to that for just a moment. From this location, if you ever want to check, and it's also on the syllabus, but from instructor information, if you click on that link right here, what you are going to find, now here's a link to my website. Sometimes my speaking style is intentionally slower because I don't want to click out of anything. From this location, as I showed you on Wednesday, scroll all the way down. I would also strongly encourage you to bookmark this. But scroll all the way down, and you can see just about everything that you need for this course. Sometimes there's an anomaly where you'll see a PDF icon, which the perfectionist that I am, as I told you before, drives me nuts. There's Introduction to Public Speaking. A shameless plug, as I showed you also earlier in the week, for my Advanced Public Speaking course, which is always offered in the spring. Right here, at this point, you can scroll through the window. There's the syllabus, there's the speech critique, examples, online YouTube links from 2020 during the pandemic, during the spring, course itinerary, course speech schedule. But in here, all different kinds of outlines and links to audios and videos, which right now are not playing on Google Drive, but tons and tons of representative examples of outline structures for the 4 major presentations that you're going to be giving. You might find something in here, and as I'd indicated, I'll show you a number of these each week. Monday and Tuesday of next week, we'll look at demonstrative outlines as we go through the process of research and topic selection. But tons of materials here, including everything that I have done for this class. There is Wednesday. Actually, those are at the bottom. Those videos are from the first summer session of 2023. 2022, these 2 are from the first summer of 2023. But just so you know that there's so much data that can be accessed on my website. Now, we were talking about effective content from a variety of perspectives. What I want to do right now is to show you 2 examples of effective content as I view it from the standpoint of the SAU speech critique. The first person that you are going to see today is someone who at the time was a freshman. She is now someone who is, I believe, a junior and has taken courses from me, even though she's not a major, in mass media and mass communication. This is Talissa. Here's how she sets up a presentation on sickle cell anemia. So right now we're going to be focusing on what makes effective content. Also be aware that some of you may not necessarily use technology where you can incorporate your face, as you've seen before, into the slides. What she did was to take her computer screen, turn it around, and shoot her speech on her smartphone. She's got her laptop there so she can access all different kinds of information. So what we are examining now is what makes Talissa's video on sickle cell anemia particularly compelling. This week, I'm showing you speeches from all 4 categories. We'll specifically focus on demonstrative on Monday and Tuesday. But what makes effective content in a speech? Her quality of her visual certainly come into play, but her research, specifically involving her family, is very important. So our first speech of the day regarding effective content in a class is sickle cell anemia.
Hi, my name is Susan Mitchell, and I will be doing my informative speech on sickle cell anemia. Why I chose this topic? I chose this topic because it's very personal to me because I have sickle cell trait, to which I inherited from my father. I also chose this topic because I want to get a better understanding of the difference between sickle cell trait and sickle cell disease and what comes with both of them. What is sickle cell anemia? Sickle cell anemia or sickle cell disease are eye-shaped structures of red blood cells that result in blockage of blood flow to different cells and blood vessels on the body, whereas sickle cell traits are combinations of altered hemoglobin and normal hemoglobin that results in sickle cell traits. So, in other words, sickle cell disease are blood cells that are only croissant shaped, they are abnormal. Whereas with the sickle cell trait, you have both abnormal and regular blood cells, and they're easier to flow through your body. And as you can tell from the photo up here, this is what normal red blood cells look like, and these are what sickle cell blood cells look like, which are croissant shaped or maybe crescent moon shaped, you could say. Another thing I would like to add is that if you have the disease or trait, you will know within 1 to 5 months of you being born. So if you have the sickle cell disease, you're gonna know because it's gonna attack your body and it comes with many problems and many symptoms. Who is the disease targeted to? The disease is targeted to African Americans, as you can see from the chart. And I'm not quite sure why specifically targeted to African Americans. I assume that it's simply because all of us African Americans have a lot of things in our blood that are the same, to which we catch either this disease or we inherit this trait. And another thing I found that was interesting is that this trait is also, or disease is mostly targeted to men. As I said, I inherited it from my father, to which I do believe that to be true, that it is mostly targeted to men. How can you get the sickle cell disease? Well, there are 3 scenarios that come with how you can inherit the disease. So the first scenario is 50% chance of you inheriting the disease. And that is simply because if one parent has the trait, you have a 50% of either catching the disease, of inheriting the trait, or not inheriting the trait at all. The second scenario is if both parents have the trait. And the trait is very harmful to your body. It doesn't do anything to you. You wouldn't even know you had it. And basically, what happens is if one parent has the sickle cell trait and the other has sickle cell trait, it could combine and make the child have the sickle cell disease. So be careful who you marry if you have a sickle cell trait, and be careful who you have children with if you have the sickle cell trait or disease, because you could inherit it to your child and your child could become very ill or very sickly. And the last scenario, which in my opinion is the worst, is if one parent has the disease and the other parent has the trait. And that is a 50% chance, which I feel as though it should be 60 or 70% because it's very high risk. So basically what this is, if you have the sickle cell disease and you have the sickle cell trait, and the other parent has the sickle cell trait, then the child, in my opinion, is more than likely to get the sickle cell disease. And I'm saying this because with the sickle cell disease, as I said earlier, you have only abnormal blood cells. Whereas you have the sickle cell trait, you have abnormal and regular blood cells. And I feel as though it's like in math when things cancel each other out. So I feel as though since you have this sickle cell disease that has already abnormal blood cells, only abnormal blood cells, where you have a sickle cell trait, which also has part abnormal blood cells, going to cancel out, and the child is going to have sickle cell disease. And something interesting that I found out with the first scenario being if one parent has the trait, then the child has 50% of catching it or inheriting it, is that, like I said earlier, I inherited the trait from my father. And me and my brother are 9 years apart, and he didn't inherit it at all. He didn't inherit the trait, he didn't inherit the disease. He has nothing at all, which I found was odd. And I did a little further investigation research, and there's nothing really to say why this or why that. But I hope the research comes up eventually. How does the trait affect someone that has it? It doesn't. As it says, no harm, no symptoms, no problem. It's like you don't have it at all. Nothing at all. There may be things in your life that pop up that show that, oh, maybe this happened because I had the trait, but that's it. How does the disease affect someone that has it? So if you have the sickle cell disease, it really affects your immune system and many things in your body. And some of the symptoms are infections, fatigue, joint pain, delayed development, urination problems, yellow jaundice, and many other things. And something else I wanted to add is that with having either the trait or the disease, it's incurable. You're gonna have it the rest of your life. You're just gonna have to deal with it. And with me saying that, I'm not meaning in a bad way, but it could be a lot worse. Having the disease or trait, they both are able to maintain because the trait you have no problems with, the disease you have a full blown problems, which they can be tamed, and you'll be perfectly fine. And something I want to add is that I had one of these symptoms, but with me having the sickle cell trait, I had yellow jaundice when I was a child, and that's basically when you're born with some type of less pigmentation, very white, yellowish pale skin. Your eyes aren't fully dilated; they're very yellow or very white. And the doctor told my mom that to prevent this and to help it, just for me to sit in the sunlight for a couple of hours a day, 1 hour a day. And as you can tell, I'm perfectly fine now. So I hope you guys learned something from what I said today about the difference between the sickle cell disease and sickle cell trait. And I hope you guys take that along on the journey.
What you notice with Talissa is obviously she is soft spoken by nature. So ideally, I would like her audio to be a little bit louder. But as we often do, let's just go back and take a look, because we're talking about research, at some of the graphics that she's incorporating. You go to the beginning of her presentation, there's her title slide, and I like the creativity of the template that she's using. And then you move on from there into why she chose the topic. It's very personal on her part. And by the way, even though we're not getting into delivery yet, she obviously has practiced quite a bit. You can tell from her eyes, you can tell by her voice if we play it in real time. Not only has she practiced the delivery a lot, but she comes across as very knowledgeable, very sincere, and someone who knows a great deal about the topic because, of course, she says with that first bullet point quote, I have a sickle cell trait to which I inherited from my father, and how you can understand that particular situation. What is sickle cell anemia and the sickle cell trait? There you can tell she's looking at it and then back out to her smartphone, discussing it in detail. Think about some of those elements that I discussed on the research area with the organizational structure, that type of thing. Still looking at her notes, and then moving on to how you get the sickle cell disease with the 3 different scenarios that she discusses in detail. And then we just continue to move on until the slide changes, and I don't know if it will or not until there. How does it affect someone that's got it? You've got infections, fatigue, joint pain, delayed development, urination problems, yellow jaundice with the trait and disease being incurable. And then she gets to, I believe that's the end of her speech, and she'll keep it there. But now let's just go back and watch her with the audio down and the closed captioning up to check her particular style. Look at her eyes. Her research is strong enough that she's focusing, and you can tell she's concentrating very much, speaking in complete sentences. So the graphics that she has are being used to stimulate her extemporaneous ability. And you can tell, even though she's soft spoken by nature, she was conversational throughout the speech. Let's go ahead and take it off closed captioning and then mute.
He has nothing all.
There we go. The audio is muted. We'll move on into a second presentation that is focusing on research. Now, the camera will stay on me, but just a reminder that I'm looking for these particular items in content. Is your research thorough? Your organization logical, your introduction relevant, main supporting points apparent, conclusion compelling, fairness inclusive, and analysis thoughtful. I'm not going to be writing out one of these for each of you. I just want you, as I indicated, to use this as a checklist, because if you feel pretty confident in these three areas, you'll be fine. Now let's look at another presentation, which I feel is very strong in terms of content. This is going to be from the first summer session of 2020. And a reminder that when we were looking at Talissa, she spoke 2 years ago during the spring of 2021. Our next speaker is Angelina from the first summer session of 2020, so roughly 3 years ago this month. And she is going to be talking about living with an anxiety disorder. And we'll go ahead and get this set up. You'll notice that unlike what you saw with Talissa, who sent me her speech on something called Microsoft SharePoint, Angelina has placed her visual for Loom, her webcam, in the bottom left-hand portion of the screen. And let's go ahead and take off the unmute. This is very interesting from the standpoint of being an informative speech. Keep in mind that this week I'm showing you all different kinds of presentations that fall into the categories of each of our class periods during the week. Living with an anxiety disorder and focusing on quality research.
My name is Angelina Roberts Hartsfield. Today I will be doing my informative topic over living with an anxiety disorder. I decided to do this topic with everything that's been going on this year in 2020, from the classes of 2020 not being able to have a real graduation, to the quarantine from COVID-19, and even the racism that struck America. We all may have felt some type of worry or angst against the future. And I just wanted to do this presentation in order to help the people who feel this way to know that it's okay to have some kind of worry and that you're not alone. And there are ways that you can and things you can do to actually help yourself in this time of need. What is anxiety? Anxiety is a mental disorder characterized by the feeling of worry, anxiety, or fear that is strong enough to interfere with one's daily activities. Symptoms include stress that is out of proportion to the events, the inability to set aside worry, and restlessness. From the two pictures above and below, you see examples of anxiety and worry and what it really kind of symbolizes and how it makes one look and feel. Examples of an anxiety disorder can vary from panic attacks to OCD or obsessive compulsive disorder and PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder. The three pictures at the bottom each symbolize panic attacks, obsessive OCD, and PTSD. The first one symbolizes panic attacks, a sense of dread, choking, rapid heartbeat, wobbly legs. These are all symptoms of someone who is having a panic attack. The middle picture shows the warning signs of OCD: depression, compulsive behavior, intrusive thoughts, seeking reassurance, and becoming isolated. These are all warning signs that you or somebody you may know is coming down with OCD. And lastly but not least, there's a picture of two brothers. One is a soldier who just came home from war, and the other one has been just a brother who stayed in America. And he says, "Great to have you home, bro. I'm not a scratch on you." And as you can see from the picture, the soldier is having a grenade on his head, which kind of symbolizes him being a ticking time bomb. I want to take time to kind of talk about this picture because it brings up a big topic that just because you don't see somebody going through a mental illness physically doesn't mean that it isn't affecting that person or it shouldn't be taken seriously. A lot of people with PTSD go through a lot. With any kind of mental disorder, people go through a lot, and it takes a toll on that person. And so you should treat every mental disorder as it is an actual disease, or if it's something that's physically ailing them. Because at the end of the day, just because we don't see it doesn't mean that it isn't affecting anybody or it isn't hurting the person. What is it like having an anxiety disorder? For people, just like an ailment, it varies from person to person, and each testimony is differently. For me, having anxiety is like when I worry so much, like with doing this presentation. I had so much anxiety. I've recorded multiple times doing this, and I was just worried about how the professor would grade me on this and how I would actually do. I take my grades very seriously, and for me, grades is something that gives me very big anxiety. One time I had a whole breakdown in class because I got a B. Like, that's how hard I take my grades seriously. So for me, that's what anxiety is like. For other people, it may be different. It may be you worrying about getting a scholarship for college or a track accepting offer or something like that. Each person is different, but all in all, the essence of it, the feeling is the same. A feeling of confusion and chaos, which is what the bottom left-hand picture shows. The lady is holding her head. You see a cloud of confusion. The other side shows risk factors for SAD or social anxiety disorder, which is very common. Things from early traumatic events to parenting style and even an isolated upbringing. These things could all contribute to you having SAD or social anxiety disorder. In essence, having an anxiety increases your breathing and heart rate, and it causes concentrating blood flow to your brain, which is where you need it. So for many people, like any disorder, again, it's different for each person. Each testimony varies, yet essentially the feeling is the same. How to deal with anxiety. These are 3 different ways that someone, you or somebody that you may know who has anxiety, can deal with their anxiety disorder. The first one is therapy. These are 3 types of therapies that can be used: cognitive behavior therapy, meditation, and psychotherapy. The second one I want to really emphasize on because it's something that anyone, anywhere can do. And whether you have anxiety or not, or if you're a perfectly healthy person, these are good things you can do day to day to kind of help yourself improve your mental health and your physical health. Self-care, avoiding alcohol, reduce caffeine intake, physical exercise, even a healthy diet. These are things that everyone should do to help take care of their bodies, physically, mentally, and spiritually. And last but not least, medication. I want to emphasize that street drugs and self-medication is not something that I would recommend. All these medications are usually prescribed by your primary care physician or someone who is licensed to prescribe these medications. SSRIs, antidepressants, sedatives, these are all different types of medication that someone can take or be asked to be prescribed on in order to help deal with their anxiety. How to help anyone with anxiety. First aid. This slide is for the people who say if you do not have anxiety or you don't have an anxiety disorder, but you know someone who is and they have a moment, that these are things that you can do to actually help that person get through that and kind of help them out. Most anxiety attacks will result in the person hyperventilating. This is when somebody is taking in very deep breaths but really quickly. To help the situation, you can first start by reassuring the person. Do not assume that you automatically know what's wrong with the person or what caused this person to feel this way. Just the best thing you can do is just to try to help them calm down, to get their calming, and just to reassure them that everything is going to be okay. The second thing you can do is to help get their breathing rate down. Do this by helping them breathe in slowly. Inhale through the nose, holding for several seconds, and then exhaling slowly. Do not breathe through a paper bag. Oh, we see this in movies and sometimes think it's a good idea. It's actually highly not recommended. Extra information. These are statistics that I saw when I was researching that I thought would actually be great to talk about because it shows that a lot of people actually do have an anxiety disorder. Anxiety actually affects over 40 million adults in the United States, ages 18 and up, or 18.1% of the population every year. And then though so many people go through anxiety disorder, only 10% with anxiety actually receives the help that they need. 30% has anxiety of unwell issues. And then the other 30 do not have anxiety or doesn't get help for it because they don't have it. But it mostly affects ages 18 and older, though it can start from any age, to be honest. Anxiety disorders are highly treatable, yet only 36.9% of those suffering receive treatment. People with anxiety disorders are 3 to 5 times more likely to go to the doctor and 6 times more likely to be hospitalized for psychiatric disorders than those who do not suffer from anxiety disorders. Anxiety disorders develop from a complex set of risk factors, including genetics, brain chemistry, personality, and life events. So it can, like I said, each disorder affects people differently, and no two people are the same. It could be in your genetics, the reason why you have anxiety disorder, or something that you dealt with when you were younger, or something that happened to you in your life, or even just your brain chemistry. Anxiety and depression is something that's serious and should not be taken very lightly. It doesn't mean that you're an outcast or that you're weird or you're different. You're just human. And it's okay to feel this way, but it's also good to get help that you need. Do not try to hide it or feel ashamed because you're going through this. Everyone has some type of fear. It has some type of worry at least once in their life. And if they don't, they're lying. So it's okay to feel this way, but it's also better for you to try to get help. Talk to somebody, to a friend, a counselor, a therapist, your doctor, most importantly, so you can get the help that you need and you can feel better. This now concludes my presentation. Thank you for your time.
As you saw with Talissa, who's more soft-spoken, and to be quite honest, her audio in comparison to Angelina is going to be a little bit lower because she's shooting it off her smartphone. So she's physically more distant from the microphone than Angelina is from her webcam. Let's go ahead and mute the audio. What they have in common is strong research tendencies. As we witnessed with Talissa and sickle cell anemia, now let's go back to the beginning of Angelina's presentation and take a look at some of her slides and how she is using that not only as a research tool, but also to remain extemporaneous and conversational throughout. Some of the examples of anxiety disorders and those visuals. So she's got a combination of what amounts to bullet points and interactivity with a YouTube link. So we go, let's make certain that I didn't jump the gun here. She's defining the term. Remember, that is an informative speech. What is anxiety? So she's defining the term and then returning back to the symptoms. Then what it's like to have an anxiety disorder. All of this data, whether it's the headline, the information on what amounts to a bullet point, even though there's no bullet there, and the visuals, all are going to be visually interesting, stimulating her ability to be quality speaker. The artificial intelligence, by the way, broke this down. Introduction, symptoms, what it's like, and then transitioning over into the next graphic, how to deal with anxiety, the quality of the research from the benefits, among other things, self-care and therapy. Here's where, when you get done with your presentation, you really need to think about where you want to put your webcam. I'd probably, in her case, probably consider putting it in this area because it's obscuring one of her bullet points. And we'll move on here in just a moment. So from this location now, let's move on to another graphic, which is how to help. Again, think about the research that she's using, such as don't breathe in a paper bag. Extra information on anxiety disorders, very quality research here. She's got data on the left-hand side with her text, and then with a visual. You don't have to mention during your presentation, I told you earlier in the week, all of this is to help, but you don't have to mention every last word on every last slide. You want to remain extemporaneous and don't make it a reading exercise. And then we get to, does she go to a final slide? I think her final slide is just the end. As we did with Talissa, let's just go back and pick up this with closed captioning. Her ability to take this research and incorporate it into a thoughtful, well-rounded speech presentation. All of the speakers that you've seen this week have one thing in common: relatively decent eye contact, and for the most part, graphics that are going to be used to accelerate their progress during the term to be a quality speaker in all of the categories that I mentioned, whether it be content or delivery or visuals. So with that in mind, let's go back to Blackboard and examine the delivery aspect of the checklist, the SAU speech critique. Now think about, from the standpoint of effective delivery, moving from content, is your extemporaneous quality continuous? Your conversational style expressive, your eye contact full, your articulation and enunciation clear, your vocal variety varied, because remember, your voice is a musical instrument, your nonverbal cues poised. Think about the ladies that we've seen so far today with Talissa and with Angelina. They both come across as being very professional, very knowledgeable, and poised. And by the way, they were both ace speakers. Are their personas authentic? Are you the same person off camera as on? I'm pretty much the same person all the time, but when all of us are in a more formal situation, we're going to act that way. But the more we become self-aware of how we are being perceived by others, we're pretty much going to carry that persona into our everyday lives, having a good awareness of what we look like, how we're being perceived, how we sound, and how confident we are. So again, is your extemporaneous quality continuous, conversational style expressive, eye contact full, articulation and enunciation clear? I'll come back to that. Vocal variety varied. You're not speaking in a monotone. Are your nonverbal cues poised? Is your persona authentic? Now let me focus on this area where I've got the cursor. Articulation and enunciation. We have discussed previously vocalics, or the formal term is formalized pauses. Listen closely to conversations. Do you hear from yourself or others? Ah, those are vocalics. They drive you nuts once you become aware of them. Ah, Do people have issues with grammar? Kinda, wanna, gonna, like, I mean, you know. You'll come across this with a lot of individuals who haven't paid particularly close attention to their delivery styles. And something else, if you're going to be speaking in a formal situation, obviously you need to be aware of the dropped G's. Make very sure that you're speaking not only in complete sentences, but you're not dropping the G's off of your words. That's where you'll notice with some of these folks, and Angelina threw in a gonna, and someone yesterday had a y'all, and I noticed that because we had the closed captioning on for one of our speakers earlier in the week. But the more that you become aware of these elements in delivery, the more confident you're going to become. So these are two elements of the triad in a Reppert course. Those 7 elements of content, the 7 elements of delivery. What I am going to do next in terms of delivery is show you a couple of examples of folks who recorded their presentations and uploaded them to YouTube, did it off of their smartphones. Now you'll notice Talissa had her computer screen off to the side. I think it was over her right shoulder, and then had her mouse in a location where she could click on all of her links regarding her presentation on sickle cell anemia. But the folks that you're going to see now are in a little bit of a different setup, and they're going to be focusing more on delivery, because in our first case, you don't see the person's computer. You see the person shooting right off of a webcam. It was during the pandemic in spring of 2020. This is a wild card presentation, persuasive in nature, but it's a wild card speech on why you should delete all social media. This is from Francine Ansley. Pay attention to the thoughtful nature now of her delivery, because she's got a setup where we don't see any visuals. I've already got it set up where the closed captioning will be on the screen. So this is from 3 years ago. Here we go.
Hi, my name is Francine Ansley, and I will be talking about why you should just ditch social media completely altogether. So recently, during this quarantine, I did just that. I deleted Snapchat, I deleted Instagram, Twitter, I deleted any social media. I believe that social media makes people focus more on others. To back this up, when people are using social media excessively, they tend to focus more on others' accomplishments than their own. People seem to focus on how successful others are and tend to compare others' lives with their own. What social media users rarely realize is that the lifestyle showcased on social media by their friends and peers is rarely a steady reflection of what's actually going on in their lives. Those are only the highlights of their best moments, and even if those are their best moments, you shouldn't compare them with your own accomplishments. People's happiness depends on others. Basing your existence around external validation through social media is a dangerous trap which many people frequently fall into. You should not base your own happiness concept on others' likes and love reacts. Rather, you should look at yourself and live in the moment and analyze it if it makes you really feel fulfilled. If you really want to have documentation of what's going on and you want to capture those moments, that's fine. You can take pictures and take videos, but you don't need to have everyone see what you're doing. Just because you don't post it on Instagram or Snapchat doesn't mean that it didn't happen. Social media causes a distorted version of reality. What you see online is rarely reality. All we can see online is these platforms, and all they showcase are people's happy moments, the moments they've chosen to let the public see. This makes us feel conscious about ourselves and makes us doubt our own happiness and what we're doing in our own lives. So social media makes your life too public. Happiness is not the only vulnerable aspect of your life when you use social media. When you're using social media excessively, your privacy is also at risk. For many people, exposing their lives to strangers online is part of daily routine. The more strangers that request people just accept them because the more followers they have, that means the more likes and comments that they'll receive on their platforms, making other people see how popular they are on social media. Social media prevents people from interacting with loved ones. Posting happy birthday on someone's timeline on Facebook or sending them a message on Snapchat isn't really sincere or genuine, especially since those apps already give you a notification when it's someone's birthday. If you really want to let that person know that you care about them, then you should just see them in person or call them, or if you have to, at least text them. Not engage through social media. It's meaningless. Social media users have a way more difficult time of moving on with their lives. Letting go of past things can be difficult, especially if it's a breakup with your ex-boyfriend or girlfriend, and social media makes it even harder. Having a hard time getting over your ex, it's because of social media. You're constantly seeing pictures of them enjoying life on their own, and even with someone else. It can be difficult to process and accept. Also, when the time comes to buckle up and sort out your own life, you can be influenced by your whole social feed full of pictures having fun, people enjoying their lazy Sundays and enjoying the little things in life. You may feel encouraged to postpone important steps in your life and have another day off for yourself as well. So people may argue, well, hey, isn't social media a way to keep in touch with people and to stay in contact and, share parts of your life? That's what the original purpose of social media was. And if you're that person that really wants to stay in contact with people, but doesn't know like what to do about the thousands of strangers following you, I would suggest that you delete all your accounts and make new ones and have it set to private and only accept people that you know that you want to see parts of your life. Thank you for listening to this, and I hope I encouraged you to let go of social media apps. Thank you.
What you find from her presentation is the element of sincerity all the way through. Believability, someone who strongly thinks that you should delete all social media, and she talks about it. Let's go back with the audio down and just play that in real time. Pay close attention to her persona as I reinforce those elements of delivery. When you're watching Francine, does her extemporaneous quality come across as continuous? Conversational style, expressive. Eye contact, full. Articulation, enunciation, clear. Vocal variety, varied. Nonverbal cues, poised. And persona, authentic. And again, guys, does she come across in terms of her delivery as an individual who is sincere? And to me, there's no question about it. So even though she's got a setup where you can't necessarily see her graphics or see her visuals, she can get away with it here just because of the thoughtful quality nature of not only her delivery, but of her research as well. Which now brings me to a second individual that we're focusing on in terms of delivery. The speeches in my class, demonstrative next week, then informative, then persuasive, then wild card, they don't all necessarily have to be serious. They don't all necessarily have to be research based, where you're going to the SAU library or the Library of Congress. Oftentimes, like next week with demonstrative, you may be talking about personal issues, which by nature is going to make you come across as more natural and more conversational. But if you want to talk about something involving your family, you certainly can. And that is what you are going to see for our next example of a quality delivery. The individual you're going to see here is Addison Bennett. Her topic is persuasive in nature, but it's focused on her family. And if you have a large family, oftentimes, if you're doing this at home, you need to try to find a quiet place in which to practice and also to deliver a speech. And that's what she's got here. She's recording from one of the bedrooms of her home. She incorporates video into her persuasive presentation, which is a very strong delivery, and it is family based. So here we go. Closed captioning up.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Addison, and tonight I'm going to be persuading you on why having 7 siblings is the best. So let's get into it. So number 1 is you're literally never bored. I can't be bored. I have 7 siblings, even though only like 4 of them are in this presentation. Life is always like a reality TV show. I personally would say that we're better than the Kardashians. I think we're funny. There's always a lot of drama, but it's like good drama. It's always funny. And we just always have a lot of laughs, and we always hang out and have fun. So this is a picture of us hiking with our dog, and then this is a family day when they came, and my sister Bella Kate and I rode the swings. Number 2 is you always have someone to lean on, whether it be someone in their late 20s or if it's someone who literally just hit double digits. You always have somebody who will be there for you and support you and just let you cry. And this is a picture of my brother. We were on FaceTime and we were both upset about school. 3, you're never alone, so you can get lonely. If I want to be alone, I have to lock up all my doors and be quiet so they don't think I'm in there. But even if I do lock my doors and they're not in here, they will always blow my phone up until they come in. Number 4 is you're always going to be entertained. Always. There is never a dull moment when there's a large group of people. So everyone's different, but everyone's also a lot alike. And it's always funny if there's beef, or if your siblings are fighting or arguing or beefing with one another, you can just sit back and watch. It's not that great when you're the one they're beefing with, but it's pretty funny if it's not you. So our Christmas card or our Christmas pictures were pretty funny because we were all at each other's throat, except for Maddox, the middle child, who was just hanging out. And then this is of a year ago today of my sister and I and like our whole family dyeing eggs. Her egg cracked. But yeah. So next are some honorable mentions of how it's always entertaining. There's always something happening, something. So for starters, these two videos right here are from New Year's Eve, like 4 or 5 years ago. And we made like 250 little smokies, like the little weenies that you put in like crock pots and stuff. So we made like 250 of them because there was a lot of us there. And Beckett, our youngest brother, he loved them. I think we maybe each had 10. So this kid probably had at least 160 Smokies by himself, and he loves them.
What are you doing? Did you eat all the Smokies?
So he ate at least 150 by himself, and there was only 9 left, and he ate the rest of them, and he was actually upset. He cried. He also did get very sick. He also broke his arm. But yes, as you can tell, it's always something in the house. Always something. Also, they are your permanent and forced best friends. I mean, you spend 24/7 together, like 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with the same 7 people. You're bound to become best friends. And even though they get on your nerves, they're literally always there for you, which is the best. So Beckett, again, he's kind of our craziest one. This is just a funny video of him. I love this video.
I don't think they say that.
What do they say? Like moose.
That's it.
Look at me.
But yeah. Number 6 is you can't be embarrassed. So my shame is their shame. If I say something silly, it's okay. They've probably said something even sillier than I have, and it's always just fun. So no one can ever be embarrassed. Everyone's kind of clowns, to say the least. And last but not least, there's always enough people for games. We have game nights all the time, whether it's cards or board games or charades, anything. We never have to look at how many players you need to play the games because we know that we will always have enough because there's so many of us. So these are just some videos of us playing games. This one is us playing Uno, but it's really just the kids being crazy.
He's gonna get wet.
2, 3, 4.
Just kidding. That was the one of us playing Pie Face. This one is the Uno one. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
What we see in this case from Addison talking about her family and why she likes being part of a big family with 7 siblings, and also what we saw from Francine discussing why you should delete all social media, is in terms of their delivery, a likability all the way through and an ease on camera. In Addison's case, obviously, she is very proud of the fact that she comes from a big family. Let's mute the audio, go back, and if you want to incorporate, as we've seen all week, personal videos into your slideshows, that's certainly appropriate. Now pay attention. to some of the things that we have discussed with her eye contact, looking back at her visuals, and then toward the camera. The more you practice, obviously, the more comfortable you will be on camera, which is where she is here. Obviously, a unique setup because she's obviously sitting down, has the laptop on the bed, and tried to find a quiet place to practice and actually to record. And with a large family, you can imagine how challenging that would be. Putting in those particular video clips, I thought was helpful. And there's part of them right here. Now, I don't know if I've got it set up where we'll actually see her click on one of these videos, but the fact that he ate all of those little Smokies is certainly, obviously, indigestion big time. When anyone looks off to the side, by the way, with their delivery, they're thinking about what they want to say. Watch your eyes, how she's coming up with a particular concept, because on that visual, there's no text. She's setting up, in this case, playing the video clip. Let's go back a little bit and pick up the audio.
What are you doing? Did you
And
eat all
she's
the
proud of being in the
Smokies?
family and like showing those video clips.
So he ate at least 150 by himself.
That's what it can be like if you've got a topic that you feel comfortable with, and your delivery style is just going to be that much more confident as a result. Now let's move on. We've looked at content with two different speakers. We've looked at delivery with two different speakers. Now let's wrap up the day by examining visuals with two different speakers, by initially returning to Blackboard and the checklist. For the speech critique, I've moved it down into the area of visuals. All of you are going to have a different approach working on slideshows. All of you have probably done them at some point, probably whether it be Microsoft PowerPoint or Google Slides. And of course, now in the last couple of years, Canva, C-A-N-V-A, is becoming more and more prominent. So no matter how you set up your slides, and remember from the syllabus, anywhere about 6 in that length should be appropriate for a course like this. Think about these elements. In terms of delivery, is your design uniform? Is your font, color, and shading readable? Your spelling and grammar accurate? You can imagine if you've got misspellings on a slide, it's going to really hurt your overall credibility if you can't spell. Is your text and image balance comparable? You'll notice on one of the slides from Addison with those 3 different video clips, she didn't have any text. That's okay. So do you have something that is text-based or image-based? That balance is appropriate. Is your interactivity recurrent? That really takes more in the classroom. Is your storytelling dynamic? Because remember, you are storytellers in addition to being verbal when you're speaking. And are your aesthetics engaging? Do you put together something that is visually appealing? So again, with your visuals, design uniform, font, color, shading, readable, spelling, grammar, accurate, text image balance, comparable, interactivity, recurrent. Sometimes you may add a video clip into your presentation. You don't necessarily have to, but it does fill a little bit of time. We'll look at some of those over the next few weeks. Is your storytelling dynamic? And are your aesthetics engaging? With all of these elements in mind, 7 from content, 7 from delivery, and 7 from visuals, we now move on to visuals in public speaking presentations in any of our 4 areas in the course. The first presentation where we're going to be focusing on uniqueness of visuals comes from the first summer session of 2020. and it is making special effects for television and movies. This is Sharissa, unique in terms of her visuals because she is practicing what she's preaching. Look very closely at how she's got her webcam set up, where she's going to be doing the special effects during her presentation. This is her wild card on making special effects. You can tell she's got it broken down into introduction, history, materials, tutorial, glue, blood, and here we go.
Hello, my name is Sharissa Oliveras, and before I get my presentation started, I would like to say that I am 100% okay. My presentation is on making special effects. Special effects started in the mid-1920s by a man named Lon Chaney, who decided to make his own personalized look for his roles in The Phantom of the Opera, The Hunchback in Notre Dame, and other such plays. It was not very popular until the 1930s, where monster films started becoming extremely popular. Nowadays, you can see special effects used in movies, plays, Halloween costumes, and cosplay outfits. For your materials, you will need a red ink pen. I do not need it, and I threw it out last take. But you will need it if you want to make an outline of where you want to make your wounds first. You also need fake blood. If you do not have any actual fake blood from the store, you can use food coloring or a drink enhancement. You will need glue or the professional fake skin latex, wax, or other. You will need 2 toothpicks, one for glue and one for blood. A mirror if you are working with your face, and makeup powder, specifically a pink one or one that is more yellowish than your skin. For the application of a wound, first, before you get anything started, put your hair up. You do not want to get your hair in the way of your glue or fake blood, as it will mess up the effect, or it will just make your hair sticky or malcolored. Once you put your hair up and away from your face, what you want to do is make a line of where you're going to have your wound. I am running out of wound space, so I will be making my wound right around here. Once you make your outline, you want to take your powder. Depending on what kind of wound you want to make, old or new, you grab that color. If you're making an old one, you will take the yellowish. If you want a new one, you will take the pinkish. I will be using an older wound. And what you do, where you outlined, if you outlined, you add the powder. It gives the base illusion of being old skin or skin that had to grow back. Once you get that out of the way, you take your glue or your fake skin, depending on what you are using, and take it off of the stick. Once you get it off of your glue stick, make sure that you have a generous amount. If you have for a big wound, you're going to need more than this. If it's a small wound, this should be enough. Take the glue off of the stick and apply it to where your wound is going to be at, smudging as you go. The smudging is so that it can, 1, dry faster, and 2, look as closely as possible to skin. If you don't use enough glue, that is okay. You can always go back and get more glue in this step. If you are satisfied with how much glue you have and where you put it, take your glue stick one more time and draw a line right down the middle of it. The next part is the fun part. Fan it a little. This helps it dry a little bit faster. Once you have fanned it, take your fake blood. If you want a fresher wound, use a darker colored blood or more of your drink enhancer. You get your toothpick for your fake blood, get a generous amount of fake blood on it, and make a line right through the line where your wound is at. This should give the illusion of either bleeding or having been bleeding. If you want to fan one more time, that is okay. No one is stopping you from fanning your wound. If you are making an old wound, you are going to need your powder one more time. You grab the paler color and you apply it to the wound to make it look old and therefore not as grotesque as the new wounds. It takes a bit for glue to dry. As you can see in the picture there, I have some purple still left over from the glue I was using. This is okay. It is normal. It takes a little bit for glue to dry. If you are not a patient person, you can use a blow dryer if you prefer. Or, if it was too much glue and it's not drying fast enough, you can take off all the glue that remains. And feel free to experiment. It does no harm if it's not perfect either. Bruising is harder than making scars, I believe, because it requires more coloring, especially on a pale person such as I. If you want to make the effect of a bleeding nose, you are going to need your fake blood, dip it in there, run it around the rim of your nose, put it inside your nose a little bit, just a little bit, and start making a path where the blood was running. If you want to make it look like you've had it a while, smudge it by wiping your nose. And that is all I have for this presentation. I hope this helps you for your next costume. And have a great day.
Let's go ahead and mute Sharissa's audio and then just move back into her presentation and pay particular attention to her visuals as I play it, and you think about the elements from the SAU speech critique on the checklist with visuals. As you're watching Sharissa talking about making special effects for television and for movies, is her design uniform? Font, color, shading, readable? Spelling, grammar, accurate? Text, image balance, comparable? Interactivity, recurrent? Storytelling, dynamic? And are her aesthetics engaging? Think about her design, her spelling and grammar, her storytelling, and her aesthetics in particular. She does have a uniform design, Her spelling and grammar are, for the most part, accurate. Her storytelling is definitely dynamic, and her aesthetics are engaging. In this particular case, if you're going to be talking about special effects in movies, obviously, as we bring the audio back up, you're going to want to have compelling visuals.
Off of your glue stick, make sure that you have a generous amount. If you have for a big wound, you're going to need more than this. If it's a small wound, this should be enough.
She goes on and talks about it in a unique manner. Our final presentation of the day obviously is really visually compelling because the presenter is discussing for her speech, which is persuasive, fall of 2020, discussing the issue of cartoons. These last two speakers, as well as our first two, are utilizing Loom, Loom technology, placing their webcam directly into their slideshows. Here we have someone who is a real devotee of cartoons. This is Sam, and she is discussing with cartoons why animation is an important and useful medium. We'll bring up the audio, and she's almost exactly at 5 minutes. So her introduction, the artificial intelligence does this for some of our presentations. I don't. Genres, capturing emotions, stylizing animation, BoJack Horseman, and her conclusion with examples and her outro. Here we go.
Hello, my name is Sam Hawkins, and this is my speech on cartoons and why animation is an important and useful medium. Many people tend to dismiss animation as lesser than live action because they see it as a genre for kids. However, animation is not some monolith. You can't categorize all animation under the same umbrella. Animation is a medium that encompasses many different types of stories and genres under it. There are plenty of different genres that can be animated. There is horror, there is action, there is comedy, and there's plenty of them that are aimed at adults, such as the ones on the screen, which are Archer and the Harley Quinn series. Certain character designs also work better animated than they do in live action. Too much CGI in live action can often come off as unnatural and make the audience lose their immersion. As you can see, the animated concept art, I should say, of this character looks a lot more interesting and also just a lot easier to look at than the image on the right of the live action version that was animated using a lot of CGI but a live actor. Animation is also really good at capturing emotions and movements, as they can often be really exaggerated and over-exaggerated. Unlike in live action, where actors can only portray a reasonable amount of emotions without looking silly, animation is kind of not held to that thing and is sort of allowed to express in more exaggerated ways. Some examples of this are these characters who are expressing in ways for both dramatic and for comedic effects, and are able to get their emotions across really effectively because of the medium that they're in, allowing them to be more expressive and exaggerated. Animation can also be stylized in interesting ways. A good example of this is Into the Spider-Verse, which was animated to look as if it was a moving comic book. It uses many bright colors and halftones and a combination of 2D animation and 3D animation to get across this comic book feel. Another good example of a really well done animated series is BoJack Horseman, which uses symbolism and things like that to cover many serious topics such as depression and substance abuse and mental illnesses. A lot of these things are covered using symbolism and things like that to sort of get the emotion of the scene across in ways that couldn't be really achieved in live action. In conclusion, animation and cartoons can be for anybody. Animation is a time-consuming form of art, and even simple kids shows can take lots of time and effort to make. So animation as a medium should not be dismissed as something lesser than a live action. It takes just as much work to do and is just as creative. Here are some really good examples of animated series with interesting stories and characters and things like that. There's Over the Garden Wall, Tangled the series, Adventure Time, Avatar: The Last Airbender, and BoJack Horseman, which I mentioned earlier, but I would advise to check out some content warnings for that one before watching it, because as I said, it covers a lot of heavy topics. That's all I have for you today. Thank you for listening, and I hope I could help you gain a new perspective on animation as a creative medium.
I should mention, by the way, before we go back and play a little bit of Sam's presentation focusing on her visuals, whenever you're recording, whether it's on YouTube or whether it's on Loom, when you're done with your presentation and say thank you, don't end the recording immediately. Wait a couple of seconds, because occasionally you might cut off the end of your remarks. So just go ahead and let it play. You'll notice in this case, on the left-hand side, she's right around 5 minutes. So she's well within that area of 4 to 6 minutes for us, or 5 to 7 minutes in some years gone by. But again, once you're done, thank you, and think to yourself, 1001, 1002, 1003, then go ahead and stop it. And as I've indicated on each of our class sessions so far, save everything that we don't see. Where are you having issues? You heard a couple of vocalics from some of our speakers this week, the ers, the ahs, the ums. Those will be eliminated in time once you become aware of them. So let's just move back and watch this as we did with Sharissa on making the special effects. Pay particular attention now, and we'll put the closed captioning up. Pay particular attention to her text image balance. Look at her design. It's very creative. She's got her webcam in the upper left-hand portion of the screen, so it's not really obscuring much text. I told you yesterday, if I'm in this class, I probably, when you watch the cursor, am going to place my webcam here. Most of you will do something left flush, and there's so much empty space here, you don't have to worry about obscuring any visuals or obscuring any text. Notice whenever she plays, nice little effect there with capturing emotions and movements. You can always tell when people have practiced a lot because their delivery is going to be pretty cogent, pretty compact, and smooth. She does a nice job. As we wrap this up in terms of the actual speech critique, which we will return to now in the student preview mode on Blackboard, think about all of these areas one more time. In terms of your content, the research, the organization, the introduction, the main supporting points, your conclusion, fairness, analysis. Is it thorough, logical, relevant, apparent, compelling, inclusive, and thoughtful? For your delivery, the extemporaneous quality, conversational style, eye contact, articulation, enunciation, vocal variety, nonverbal cues, persona. Are they continuous, expressive, full, clear, varied, poised, authentic? Ideally, nothing is going to be average, and certainly nothing is going to be from the far right-hand side, because that's not necessarily a good sign for any of the ideas. From your visuals, the design, font color shading, spelling grammar, text image balance, interactivity, storytelling, aesthetics. Are they uniform, readable, accurate, comparable, recurrent, dynamic, or engaging? Again, this is an unofficial checklist, but it's helpful to use in your respective speech preparation processes. So go back and watch all of these videos, in particular, focusing on what I think is important in these categories. And from all of these particular presentations, which run the gamut in reverse chronological order, a wild card, or a persuasive, or an informative, or a demonstrative for next week. What works best for you? And to reinforce what I talked about at the outset, yes, all of you are going to be choosing your own topics, but we'll talk about that next week. Returning to the course syllabus, let's first of all go to the updated course speech schedule. You have coming up on day one, all the way through the semester, every Wednesday, we will watch videos of speeches from Askew, Brewer, Brown, Dean, Easter, Green, Hall, Henderson, Jordan, and Lewis. On day two, each Thursday, starting next week, it will be Malone, McCamey, Oliveris, Orvis, Perry, Ray, Roy, Sams, Tell, and Welch. And I will be talking next week about how you can record on Loom or on YouTube and sending material to me before class on Wednesday or before class on Thursday to my Yahoo account. Returning to the course syllabus, our course itinerary for next week, and it will be the same over the next 4 weeks. Monday, June 5, demonstrative speech research. Tuesday, June 6, demonstrative speech topic selection. Wednesday, June 7, demonstrative speech day 1. Thursday, June 8, demonstrative speech day 2. Don't worry about doing any research right now or sending me anything. Just go ahead and relax over the weekend. You've got plenty of time to think about how you want to get stuff set up, practice your presentations, how you're going to put your slideshows together, how you're going to incorporate your webcams if you're using Loom, how you're going to set stuff up on your smartphone if you decide to use YouTube, which is why all of this week you've seen recordings of different speeches on a variety intentionally that I've been showing you on different video formats. So in this particular area, remember all different things to look at from the syllabus, from the course itinerary, the course speech schedule, the checklist, and joining us live in the course room. But for your benefit, in the tools category, Class Collaborate Ultra, you'll notice here on the bottom, we've already got stuff set up for next week with joining us live. However, at the menu, go to recordings, and usually within no more than 30 minutes after the end of this recording session, the third session should pop up on the screen. It will say Session 3, Effective Content, Delivery, and Visuals. And from this location, you can watch it now, anything done during the week, or you can go to my YouTube channel, which I showed you previously. So as we conclude for the week, as I had indicated when the screen was on from Blackboard, don't worry about doing any research right now. On Monday of next week, we'll do a deep dive into different types of demonstrative speech outlines that are on my website, how you can construct a slideshow to help you remain extemporaneous and conversational. A demonstrative speech is a how-to. You'll recall that the first two that we were looking at primarily involved processes involving cooking or crafting. A lot of stuff on my website ties into that. But we will return on Monday for the first day of Demonstrative Speech Week. As for SPCH 1113, Introduction to Public Speaking for the first summer session of 2023, that concludes the recording session for today.